If you've ever experienced a glitch in the Matrix, or have another true scary story you might want to send my way, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. I have a story that may be hard to follow because I'm not much of an author. And I've never taken the time to write this whole thing out, but it's a glitch that I think should be out there. Because it was interesting. Back when I was a kid, I think like 10-ish years old, I used to have a lot of hyper-realistic and lucid dreams. I would often have dreams where I would be fully aware that I was dreaming. But at the time, I didn't know that lucid dreaming was a thing, so I just thought this was completely normal. I never brought it up to anyone because I just thought that's how everyone dreamed. There was one dream, however, during these couple of years that I would repeatedly have. And when I say repeatedly, I mean almost every night. This dream always began the same way. I was holding a glass of orange juice. I would be sitting on the couch in the old living room. It had the bulky CRT television, the old faded floral wallpaper, and it was my mom's old couch that had a hole in the center cushion from where my brother had accidentally set it on fire. During the dream, my brother was back in his room, so it was just myself and my mom in the living room, and we were watching TV. I remember that the TV was showing the story on a shuttle launch, which was almost a common thing back then. Those in my age group will know about when this was. I loved watching the shuttle launches as a kid, so I would always be there watching intensely. In this dream, as they showed the footage of the shuttle launching, I remember the phone ringing. I remember because I was annoyed that the ringing interrupted my watching of the shuttle. My mom would walk over to the kitchen and answer the phone, and it was always my grandmother on the other end. I remember I would always look over to my mom at the exact moment that her face would go from a glowing smile to a look of devastation. The call, in the dream, was always the same. My grandma was calling my mom to tell her that my grandpa had had a heart attack, and that he was being rushed to the hospital. The dream would typically end with her hanging up and telling me that we needed to go. No matter how many times I had this dream, and no matter how lucid my other dreams always were, this one was always a surprise. I could never do anything about it. I could never control it or myself in this dream. And I had this dream so many times over the couple of years that it occurred. After that couple of years, though, the dream did fade, and I pretty much forgot about it, mostly because I really didn't like that dream. Then came my 21st birthday. My brother and I were over at my mom's for the day, and I was in the living room sitting on the couch, though I was drinking a root beer, of all things. My mom was in the kitchen making dinner for us, and my brother was in the back of the house doing something in his old room. It was the same house, though a lot had changed. The wallpaper was different, the TV was a bit more modern, though still old by today's standard. But overall, it was that same feeling. But then, as I was sitting there, my hand hit that small burn hole in the cushion, and I got hit with this strange feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was almost like anxiety, but it was just this weird feeling in my gut. Then, the news switched over to a story to celebrate the 10th anniversary of one of the shuttle launches. I wish I could remember which one it was, but I can't. As I was sitting there, intently watching them talk about the shuttle that launched on that day, and all of the technological accomplishments since, they switched over to the footage of the rocket launching. As soon as this happened, I got hit with that hard deja vu. I glanced over at my mom and I could feel a cold chill creep down my spine. My voice was barely above a whisper, but I felt the need to say something. I said, "Hey, Mom, the phone's going to ring, and it's going to be Grandma. I want you to prepare yourself, though, because she's going to tell you that Grandpa had a heart attack." My mom looked at me with confusion and concern, and she started to ask me what I was talking about, but was cut off by the phone ringing. She stared at it for a moment. I think she was absorbing that moment. She slowly grabbed the house phone and then answered, and sure enough, it all played out as I had predicted. Her face drained of color, and after a bit of talking, she said that we needed to go to the hospital. The entire drive there was silent. I could tell that she wanted to ask me what the hell that was, and my brother was completely ignorant to the situation. We went in, we saw my grandpa, and talked to my grandma, and the overall feeling in the room was a positive one. But after about an hour, my mom asked me to step out of the room to talk to her. I did, and she surprised me when she looked me dead in the eyes and asked, "Does he make it? Is he going to make it through this?" Without even thinking, I shook my head and told her, "No, he's going to pass away overnight due to some complications." I don't know why I knew this, as it was never part of the dream, but I was completely certain of it. She nodded and told me okay, and we went back in. After that, my mom changed her tone a bit. She spent a few hours just talking to her dad about things, talking about memories, and asking a few questions. It was a somber time, but a loving one too. And what's worse is that it actually played out like I said it would. My grandfather passed away in the early hours of the morning. I think my ability to tell my mom that was going to happen actually made it easier on her, as she seemed to accept the situation when my grandma called her a lot more than I would have expected. We headed back to see my grandma, and we were able to stay strong for her. The days that followed were a bit of a haze, as we all had to figure things out and move forward. My mother and I never spoke about it again, and she never asked me how I knew. And I'm glad that she didn't, because I don't know how I would have explained it. That's literally the only premonition-like dream I have ever had, and I don't understand why I had it. I don't know why it haunted my childhood like it did, only to come true so long after. In the end, it's just one of those things that happened. And now that I've gotten all into glitch stories, I have to say that this probably falls under that category. In my opinion, the simulation gave me a glimpse of the future, and I was able to recall it when I needed to. But that's my story, and I want to thank you for reading it. I hope that I never experience anything like this again, but I was happy to have experienced it at all. I only first heard about traveling across parallel universes a few years ago, and it was from various online forums and, of course, from YouTube channels like yours. After hearing these stories of drifting into an alternate reality, I believe it might explain something bizarre that happened to my older brother and I when we were kids. Back then, my brother, who was 2 years older than me, had his own paper route, and would let me come along to help him. This route was a rather small one, and it paid very little. But to us, it was candy money any way you look at it. My brother was sure to give me a whole whopping 50 cents on payday. But try to consider that this was the early 90s, and you could afford a small something for that much. So I was happy with it, as the two of us would go down to a local convenience store called Speedy's after getting paid. My brother and I would deliver papers in the afternoon after getting home from school, and his route was in our own neighborhood. So my parents had no problem with 7-year-old me tagging along with him every week. The place that I grew up in is an old steel town in the greater Pittsburgh area, so all the houses are close together. The houses here are generally smaller, much older, and so are the brick streets. At certain times during the route, my brother would hand me a few papers and instruct me to deliver them to specific houses. We would repeat this routine every time we did papers, but one day it was interrupted by what I can only describe as peculiar. On this occasion, there were 3 houses I was to deliver papers to along a back street. Meanwhile, my brother would deliver a few along the next street, which was much busier than the one that I was on, with cars whizzing by every few seconds. This would be why our parents didn't want me anywhere near there. When I was finished, I was to wait on the corner of a sidewalk of a road called George Street, which ran vertical to the one that I was doing until my brother got back. I did just that on this day. But after waiting for what I felt was way too long, I got worried, and I started walking up and down the sidewalk to look for my brother. When I didn't initially see him anywhere, I called out for him and got a response, but didn't see him anywhere. Then I searched on that busier street that he was delivering papers to, which is called State Avenue, to see if he was still there. I didn't see him, but I asked a man I saw sitting on his steps smoking a cigarette if he had seen a boy with a blue Bugle Boy shirt on. For those of you who don't know, Bugle Boy was a shirt line from the 80s and 90s that went out of business back in 2001. If you'd like to get an idea of what their shirts look like, you can Google their name, or look up the show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and that'll give you an idea. Anyway, the man squinted when I asked him this, as if he had never heard of that brand before. Then he told me that he hadn't. I turned back after that and looked for my brother in the area where I had delivered papers once more, but he was nowhere to be seen. At this point, I wasn't sure what to do and started crying. So I went home to tell my parents about us getting separated, and they were livid that I left my brother. But what was I supposed to do? I couldn't find him. They made me go back and look again, so I went back to the block where I had last seen him. This was well before smartphones, but what would that matter? We were too young to have them anyways. I decided on doing the very thing my brother told me to do initially, and I waited on the street corner of George Street. After waiting there for a few minutes, my brother, who had also gone home to look for me, but went a completely different way, returned to the corner. He was panting from running, and was so upset that he scolded me for not staying put where he had said to. When I told him that I was indeed waiting there for quite a while, we were both puzzled as to how we could have missed each other in such a small block. My brother had a theory that we must have passed right by each other at some point, possibly on opposite sides of the street that I waited by. But I had a clear memory of watching both sides of the street, watching out for him. And stranger still, when I walked down to State Avenue, we almost surely would have bumped into each other at some point, so his theory is unlikely. After hearing theories about different universes running parallel to our own, is it possible that one of us traveled to one almost identical to our own? It makes more sense if you rule out all other possibilities. 2 kids on the same block being unable to find each other, then reappearing shortly after. The memory is so bizarre, which might be why I remember it so clearly. To think that all of these years have gone by without being able to explain how we lost track of each other, and now, as an adult, what I believe happened seems plausible to me. So, I was driving down my road towards my house, and I see my neighbor spraying the road in front of his house, which is right after mine. I really didn't think much of it, figured maybe he spilled something and was spraying off whatever he spilled. I pulled into my driveway, as I usually walk in front of my car, jump on my porch, and open the door. But this time I was walking around the back of my car, and when I look up, my neighbor is now spraying off his car that's now in the road where he was spraying before. I figured that his girlfriend must have just pulled up right when I was pulling in, and that's why I didn't see her drive up. There was just a couple of seconds from the time that I parked to when I saw the car, so naturally I was expecting to see the driver somewhere, either in the car or walking out. But she never walks into view, so I start walking over there. In my guts, I had this feeling that something just wasn't right. It was like I knew that the car didn't just pull up, and was there the whole time. But it wasn't there, or I would have seen it, right? So I walk up to my neighbor and say, "This is a dumb question, but was your car here the whole time, or did it just pull up now?" He looks at me a little funny and says, "No, it's been here for the past 30 minutes. I've been washing it." I tell him that when I pulled up, this car was not parked here. I say, "You were spraying the road, and there was no car." Not wanting to sound any more crazy than I already did, I just turned and walked away. I've known this guy my whole life, so he just laughs, not realizing that I'm freaking out inside. My heart is racing like I just saw a ghost or something. I seem to experience this type of glitch pretty often, but it's always something small, like my lighter or something on the counter that I could have overlooked. Although it's been getting more clear that things are gone 1 second, and then back the next. There's still the possibility that I just didn't notice it. I never really know for sure. This time though, I know for absolute certainty that car was 100% not there. The road had a big circle of soapy bubbles, and he was spraying in the center, as if there was a car there, but I just couldn't see it. The neighbors next to him have a big trailer parked in the road, and I remember I could see nothing but pavement from where I was all the way down to that trailer. No car in between. I think deep down, we all know that the world we live in is just too amazing for us to have it all figured out. So experiencing something like this, it just kinda confirms something I already knew. And even though this has happened, it's almost as if it never happened. I still have 1,000,001 questions. Thanks for reading my true story, and I hope you all enjoyed the glitch of my life. Hi. I've experienced occasional glitches in the Matrix throughout my life. The first one I can remember is when I was in college and living in the dorms. My friends in the same dorm were playing a sort of game of hide and seek, where we would go to someone's room to hide from the others, and they had to figure out where we were, or something like that. I feel like it was just a spontaneous bit of shenanigans. I had gone to my friend's room and was sitting on her bed just waiting for the others to find me. I waited, and nobody came. Finally, after a long bit of waiting and nobody showing up, they opened the door and asked where I had been. I said that I'd been there the whole time, and they said that that was impossible. That they had looked for me in that room, and it had been empty until they looked there the second time. The other incidences occurred much later in my life after I had children, and really are centered around my younger daughter. Both of my girls were scared to go down to the basement. I suppose because of a scary basement reason. However, that is where the laundry room is. One day I was just sitting in my living room, my younger daughter, who was about 8 years old at the time, very purposely walked right by me and headed to the basement steps. I was confused by this because neither girl would ever go down there alone, unless they had to, or were going down there with somebody. So I called her name a couple of times as she was walking by, which she did not respond to at all. It was as if she didn't hear me. I then got up and went downstairs to see what she was doing, to find her standing in the middle of the basement, looking around with a bewildered look on her face. I asked her what she was doing, and she said that she had just followed me down to the basement, and suddenly I was no longer there. Another time, that same daughter was waiting in the car for her sister and I as we were going to go somewhere. It took us a while to get ready, and when we went out to the car, she asked why Amy, her older sister, had come out earlier. I asked Amy if she had come outside earlier, and she said that no, she hadn't. My younger daughter said that she definitely saw her come out, but then she suddenly wasn't there. I have a group who is interested in paranormal and metaphysical things. We decided to experiment a bit with timeline jumping. There is a not-for-profit art gallery that we were all involved with. It's a very small space, and we spent a lot of time there, and were quite familiar with the place. After we did the cup method of timeline jumping as an experiment, a statuette of a pastoral girl suddenly appeared in that space that had not been there before. We asked everyone who was involved there, including the owner of the building, if they knew where that statuette had come from, and nobody knew. Did we successfully jump timelines? What do you think? This is my first time ever submitting a story to you, and it's about a glitch. I've been listening for a little while now and thought that a glitch like this would never happen to me. A little background. I work for an electrical contractor, and my job as an apprentice is to shadow a licensed electrician to learn what I need to know to eventually get my electrical license. So now for the story. I quite enjoy where I'm working. The company that I work for is a little old-fashioned with how they record our time so we can get paid. We use timesheets. The format that we use is very simple, so it's not difficult for us to figure out how to fill it out. In order to get paid for the week of work that you do, you need all 5 days filled out and turned in by Wednesday before noon. Typically for us, we fill out hours twice a week, always on Friday afternoon after we're done working for the day, and Tuesday morning before we start our day. This glitch happened on Friday afternoon when we were filling out our timesheets for the days Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We also sometimes leave about an hour early on Friday, just as a thank you for traveling an hour and a half every morning to get to the job site for that week. I filled out 3 of my timesheets, as usual, and I remember tearing them off together, so when I separated my written timesheets from the blank ones, they were all 3 still attached to each other. It's like a notepad thing, so you can peel as many sheets off as you want, without them all coming off, if that makes sense. Once I tore them off of the notepad, I went to go grab the skylift that we use to go up to the ceiling, and move it to the corner of the building to let it charge over the weekend. I remember taking the 3 sheets with me over to the lift when I was about to move it. Once I got to the corner and got off of it to plug it in, I grabbed my tool bag to leave to then realize that I didn't have my timesheets anymore. I thought that I had them in my hands the entire time because there was really no need for me to lay them down, and even if I did lay them down, I knew for sure that they were going to be on the lift. But they weren't. I looked everywhere on the lift, and even on the ground around in case it fell off, and even the path that I took, but they were nowhere. I went back to where I had originally filled them out, right in front of the 3 other people that were there, and they weren't there either. I asked them about it, and they said that they saw me take it with me to the lift, confirming what I thought I did as well. So we ended up spending the next 30 minutes looking for those papers, but they were again nowhere to be found. I was so confused to where they could have gone. We ended up just leaving because it wasn't too big of a deal to fill them in again. I made a joke to the licensed electrician that I was under that maybe it was just a glitch in the Matrix, and that I would probably end up finding it on the lift on Monday. We both just laughed and left it as that. And fast forward to today, Saturday, I was cleaning my room. Now, in no sense am I OCD, but I tend to make sure that my room is clean, that my laundry is put away in the right place. I was putting my socks away after pairing all of them, and when I opened the dresser drawer, I flipped. I had 3 timesheets in my drawer. Now, these timesheets were not filled out, but this still frightened me because I know for a fact that I did not place these in there, because they were not in the drawer when I pulled the socks out of the drawer earlier that morning, when I took a shower and got ready for the day. I also know that I have never taken any timesheets home because there was no need for me to, because I would always fill them out at work. Better yet, I was also listening to another podcast about conspiracy theories, and it was over Nikola Tesla's theory on 369. I'm not sure how to explain this theory because I'm still trying to figure it out, but I just thought it was weird that I was in front of 3 people when I filled out 3 sheets, listening to this 369 podcast. I don't know if this was just a coincidence, which it probably is, but I just thought that this was very strange. After going through a divorce, I ended up moving in with my parents for a few years. They live in a rural area on some acreage, and during the time I lived there, my dad and I did a bunch of gardening together. One year we put in a huge online order for seeds and plant starts. I had read about pawpaw trees in a gardening magazine and decided I would try growing them. My parents already had all sorts of fruit trees, nut trees, and berry bushes, but pawpaw was a fruit that I hadn't tried, and I thought that it would add nice variety. So, I ordered 2 pawpaw tree starts. When our order arrived, I sat in the living room with my dad and opened the box, pulling the seed packets and starts one by one, as I announced to my dad what each one was. When I pulled out the tree starts, the label said pears, and there was a note attached that read, "We were unable to ship your pawpaw trees, so please accept these pear trees as replacements." I read the note to my dad and told him that I was a little annoyed, because we already had several pear trees on the property, and we didn't necessarily need more. I also mentioned that they should have offered us our money back instead of just assuming we would be okay with pear trees. It was a little disappointing, but no big deal. Before we started planting, we still had some preparation to do in the garden, so we just put the box of seeds and starts in the mudroom where it sat for about a week. When we were finally ready to plant, we went through the box again, and were surprised to see that the pear trees, along with the note, were both gone, and in their place were 2 pawpaw trees. My dad planted them in the field, and I kept them watered for the next week or so, until one day they were both missing. My dad thinks that maybe an animal pulled them up, but part of me thinks that we weren't supposed to have them in the first place, and the Matrix corrected itself by taking them back. First off, let me just say that I'm a big fan of your show. It's good to know that I'm not alone. Anyway, this happened when I was a child, and to this day, I remember every single detail. So, it was just a normal night, and I was in the kitchen with my dad, He was making something, and I was having a snack. Now, I don't have any mental health issues, and this hasn't happened since. Out of nowhere, everything starts to get blurry, and I see this human head. It shows up out of nowhere, and it was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't make it out. It sounded like radio static, and at that moment, time froze. I blacked out, and I woke up in my bed. My parents were asleep, and I don't remember going to bed. And I swear to God, I was not dreaming. It was like time had reset itself. This hasn't happened since, but this has really stuck with me. Anyways, thank you for your time, and keep up the good work. Hi, Raven. This happened a few weeks ago, and the more I think about it, the more I convinced myself that I stopped a head-on crash, probably taking me with it. There are many ways that I can go to my local supermarket. On this day, I used the back roads on the estate where I live to reach the local rat run. The only remarkable thing on the outward trip was a 4x4 doing close to 80 miles per hour on this country lane. Coming back, however, I decided to take a longer ride back. As I was riding my bike along, I sensed a car coming up behind me, and at the same time I caught a glimpse in a gap of a car coming the other way, from around the corner. Now, there is no way the people in the car behind could see that car in front, as the hedges were too high, and they were sitting lower. Luckily, I was some 3 feet higher, so I just waved at them to stay behind me as I knew they would never pass, and to get back in front. Accident averted. I think they knew that they had been lucky, as I got away from both drivers and passenger as they finally came past. When I was 14 years old, I had a long-distance relationship with a teenage boy that I met on YM. You know, dumb teenage stuff. The entire relationship was just through phone calls and SMS. We decided to meet up once in the mall, and he gave me a photo of him. So when I went home and went to sleep, I kissed the picture. But I put it inside of my wallet's picture pocket and fell asleep hugging it. When I woke up, my wallet was still on my chest. The first thing I did was to say good morning to the picture, however it was gone. It was missing. I clearly remembered putting that picture inside of my wallet, because I very clearly even said, "I'll keep you right here." I panicked so badly. I cleaned my room to find it, but I couldn't. Nobody had gone inside of my room. Fast forward, I turned 20 years old and I was decluttering my room. I saw my old wallet, and when I opened it, the picture was there. The same spot. It didn't look like it had aged or anything like that, so I was shocked, and I couldn't find the word for how the heck it was there. I didn't know what it was called, but when I watched your channel and heard about these missing things suddenly reappearing, I realized, was this some kind of glitch or something? So there you have it, my friends. That was this week's collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. Scary stories that demonstrate the oddness, the strangeness, the incompatibility with reality that our simulation seems to exhibit on a daily basis. Going back 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, who knows? Who knows the point in time where existence flipped over from being normal to not normal? Simulated? I don't know. My point is, these are some weird stories, always good stories, always entertaining and interesting stories in my opinion. Stories that just kind of elude logical explanation. Yeah. You all seem to enjoy them. I enjoy them. They're good stories. They're fun to do. And I still do them weekly because of that, so there you go. If you by chance enjoyed this collection of stories, consider subscribing to the channel. I do them, like I said, weekly. And do other stories typically 2 times a week, sometimes more, occasionally but rarely less, depending on how I'm feeling. And as you could tell, I probably do sound a lot better to y'all. Not 90%, really. Not 100%, probably close to 90 to 95%. Still having some random scratchiness in the voice, which, that's fine, whatever. It'll go away eventually. It's all a matter of not coughing too much, drinking enough water, doing various other little things to help my throat be soothed. Doesn't hurt. It just gets scratchy, is all. It is what it is. That, and I'm kind of tired. I'm very tired. That could also just be the season. You know all the snow that we had, which was a lot? We had a lot of snow. A ton of snow over 2 weeks. It was still on the ground, and overnight, we got hit with freezing rain. So now, there's about a probably 1/6 to 1/4 of an ounce. Wow, my brain is frazzled. A 1/6 to 1/4 of an inch of ice on top of all that snow. Yeah, good stuff. I went outside this morning after I got up and got dressed, and almost bit it on the concrete out front. First step onto that first step outside the door, and my foot went out from under me, and if I hadn't caught myself, that would have hurt. That would have hurt bad. Because my head would have either hit the concrete, the door behind me, or the half-brick wall that's out in front of my place, so. Yeah, glad I caught myself. Last thing I need is to be hospitalized with a concussion, because my dumbass went outside after it freezing rained. Anyways, not the point. We all do stupid things. If you enjoyed the video, please do hit that thumbs up button. As mentioned before, consider subscribing. If you would like to, you can join memberships or Patreon, where you can get early access to content like this, and so forth and so on. I am still also doing the postcard thing, where if you send me a postcard for good wishes for the year, or even just to say hi, I will send you a postcard back. Typically, my postcards also come with surprises. Small surprises, nothing of, like, crazy monetary value, but just stuff. Very, very small Raven merch that it comes with. Typically stickers, because I have quite a few stickers. I need to order more, actually, because I had to send quite a few out. I have, I think, 6 postcards I need to respond to. Haven't been able to, was going to send them out today. There's freezing rain on the ground. I'm not doing that because I'm not getting out on the roads. I'll get those in the mail here very soon. I have responded to quite a few already. Yeah. If you want to send a postcard and don't know the P.O. box, just let me know in the comments. I'll remind you of the post office box. It's also on my community tab if you go find the post that says postcard exchange information. Anyways, it's all there. Or you can ask for it if you need it, regardless. The last thing we can do, now that I'm 4 minutes into this damn outro, is the word of the week. Last week, the word of the week was frigid, which is still apropos this week, but we're not going to keep going with it. A lot of you, quite a few of you, left comments with the word of the week. Here are the comments on the screen, as well as a few moments prior to now. All of you amazing people went above and beyond, left me a comment with said word of the week, and I cannot thank you enough. Because of you guys, I get to keep doing the word of the week, and get to have that interaction with you all, because it's, yeah, fun. It's fun. Anyways, thank you to all of you. I hope you guys continue to go above and beyond for me. You don't have to, but I'd appreciate it. This week, the word of the week is one that's a little happier. The word of the week is jovial, which means characterized by good-humored cheerfulness and conviviality. One may say I'm a jovial person. Might be right, might be wrong, I don't know. Anyways, leave me a sentence with the word jovial, and you'll be featured on next week's word of the week thing here at the end of the video. End of that video, obviously. Well, that said, friends, remember you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, my friends, much love, and of course, sleep well.